Now I'm going to talk about Chinese traditional culture. What makes us Chinese? When we talk about Chinese culture, we have to talk about Confucius, because Confucius was a well-known Chinese educator and as well as a philosopher. Many of his thoughts have great influence on Chinese life, and it's still affecting our life today. So it's about 2,000 years of history. Confucius' thoughts still influencing our life today. What Confucius' thoughts were mainly about the cultivation of virtue. He pays great emphasis in virtue. Some of his thoughts can be characterized like, first one, benevolence. You have to love everyone and respect everyone. Okay, that's also why Chinese society, after 2,000 of years of being influenced by Confucianism, that we emphasize collectivism, sacrificing yourself for the greater good of the society, self-discipline, okay, self-sacrifice, that are all valued by this Confucianism, this traditional Chinese philosophy. And the second, righteousness, being a straight person, do everything right, self-discipline, refrain yourself from doing anything evil. And then courtesy, being courteous, being polite, showing respect, always know what to do and what not to do. And emphasize on learning, knowledge is very much valued in the ancient Chinese philosophy. Trust, being able to trust others and be trusted. So all these sort of, there are many other thoughts, but the key word was the cultivation of virtue and also the code of conduct. The code of conduct is to serve the purpose of being able to have virtues. Okay, so in Chinese society, there are a lot of rules and regulations, even set up by Confucianism. There are a whole set of code of conduct for people to follow. For example, in China, we always know our position, who we are, and our position. Typical one is when you are having a banquet, even a family banquet, you always know where to sit, who's going to start the banquet, and who will be the last one to lift your chopsticks. Everyone knows who's going to speak and who should not be speaking at all. So everyone knows your position. That is the virtue. The virtue is that there's always a bigger, a higher authority that is overlooking your behavior. And whatever you do will have a consequence. So Chinese are very self-conscious. This cultivation of yourself, the cultivation of virtue, is at the very heart of Chinese traditional culture. And when we talk about Chinese traditional culture, we also talk about these four words, qi, qi, shu, hua, because these are also the methods to cultivate oneself. Qin, music, qi, Chinese chess, calligraphy, and painting. I'll start one by one. Qin originally means a kind of a traditional ancient Chinese musical instrument. Here it refers to music in general. But because in ancient China, you have to be able, because education is so important, once you become a scholar, you have to be able to compose poems and to be able to play the ancient musical instrument, to be able to write beautifully, and to be able to paint. So all these are considered to be the behavior of our upper class. So everyone who's in upper class will have to be able to master all these skills. And this musical instrument, as you can see from the pictures, the majority of Asian Chinese musical instruments were more about cultivation of yourself or meditation, internal meditation, rather than entertain others. Okay, because if you have heard traditional Asian Chinese music, most of them are very soothing. It's like very comforting. It's more about keeping quiet, cooling down, giving yourself time and space to think about your vision. So it's more about cultivation or meditation rather than entertaining others. Nowadays, a lot of parents encourage children to play traditional Chinese music. And the reason is that, number one, we want our children to be able to appreciate, to be part of Chinese traditional culture. So they know who they are and what their culture lies. And number two, playing a musical instrument is a good exercise for the mind and your finger. So it's a good coordination between your mind and your body. And number three, if you can play a musical instrument, and then you will have a stage for your kids to perform, and they will get a certain kind of accomplishment or achievements that also help children to gain self-confidence. So it's a good, very good exercise for the children, and also it's a way to appreciate music as well as appreciate life, to be able to find the meaning of life through playing musical instruments, through enjoying the music. So it's finding the beauty of life through music. And then Chinese chess, it's like the chess that you play in other countries. It is a game of Go, it's a game of mind. Chinese Asian scholars like to play chess. Okay. And also, we also want our children to play chess because number one, it's easy to play. Unlike having a football game that you have to organize two teams to compete with each other, playing chess, you only need another person. Usually you can find that person in your own family, so it's easy to play. And number two, international Chinese chess is, as I said, is a game of mind. You have to take long-term strategy. So it's a good way to teach kids to take a longer term, to think in longer term. So this is particularly good for boys. A lot of boys are in special class to learn how to play Chinese chess. Calligraphy. Because Chinese characters have a structure. There's always a line, but there's a structure. So it can be used as a tool to train your mind to be creative, because the structure can change, not to mean different things, but it can demonstrate different style. For example, this one is obviously different from that one, and also from this one. So calligraphy really reveals your personality, your style. People say that calligraphy is a silent dancing because Chinese calligraphy are always using ink and brush. So when you're writing Chinese characters, you really have to know, particularly when you're doing the calligraphy, you really have to know how long you're gonna stay this one strike, and then how long you have to go. It's like you pose, you go, you pose, you go. It's like dancing. There's a reason in it. So that's why calligraphy is also called silent dancing. And because it reveal different styles, it can also be always together with painting. So really, you look at Chinese calligraphy, it's really a kind of art that you can appreciate. Also, kids are learning calligraphy because it really, when you're writing calligraphy, you really have to concentrate. So it's a good way to train kids to concentrate. So that there are many children that are engaged in learning calligraphy. Chinese calligraphy also have practical purposes. For example, this is also calligraphy. This is double happiness, which are often used in weddings. Okay, and also during the Spring Festival, Chinese write couplets by using calligraphy. So it's not only beautiful, but also gives a sense of happiness. So calligraphy is really a lot of people, a kind of art that a lot of people can enjoy. it is getting more and more popular now for people who retire, because this one takes time. It takes time to write one word or a piece of calligraphy, and this really have to concentrate. It's also a kind of a cultivation or meditation, which is very helpful for the mind. Painting. Of course, there are many schools of painting, but traditional Chinese painting is ink and brush painting. And Chinese painting is more about revealing the personality of the painter than describing exactly what these objects are. For example, if you look at this picture, this is typical landscape ink painting. If you look at the ratio, the waterfall, the trees may not be in the accurate ratio, but you look at it and you see the greatness of the waterfall, right? You also see the liveliness of the houses. That's the way Chinese painters use a lot of empty spaces where that leaves room for your imagination. So you can imagine this part, the water, the cloud, the water going down. So you get kind of impression. So Chinese painting is more about the spirit than the shape of the object. And if you look at this young girl, right, there are some part of his hair is missing, but you get the spirit, right, the liveliness. And this horse, similar. There's some part of the muscles are missing. But by looking at it, you don't see anything missing. You can even feel the muscle, right? And you can see, you get the spirit of the horse running, it's like depicting a person rather than the horse, the animal. And watermelon, same. So Chinese painting is more about the kind of emotions that run through the painter than the object itself. And usually Chinese painting will be landscape, figure, animals, flowers, or still objects, or still life. So Chinese painting are more very different from the Western style oil painting, because it's more about the painter itself than the appreciator or the person who's looking at the picture. And it's more about the spirit or the emotion that runs through you when you're appreciating a Chinese painting. And also, after traditional Chinese music, after Chinese chess, after calligraphy, and after painting, we have all Chinese culture. There are also many other forms of Chinese culture. This one may be more familiar for foreigners. The Tai Chi exercise. The Tai Chi exercise, unlike Kung Fu, which is more skillful, more technical, this is more about mind-body coordination, and it's exercised in slow motion. So this is very good for senior citizens to practice. It's really about meditation of yourself in slow motion, where you can just concentrate on the qi inside yourself while doing all these moves in slow motion, and also to exercise your body. And it can also be performed. For example, during the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games, Tai Chi was performed as kind of a performance. This one I want to mention. This is a very popular. It's a popular form of art, Chinese art now, because this is what we call square dance. A lot of, as I said, China has already entered the aging society. There are many senior citizens, and one way of their enjoying life is to go to a nearby park to meet a couple of other senior citizens and dance. Whether it is social dance or just playing exercises, it's a way to enjoy themselves. And if you come to big cities in China, you will see quite common, that in every neighborhood you will see at particular time, usually before breakfast or after dinner, you will see senior citizens enjoying themselves in the parks or in the neighborhood, dancing, exercising, and enjoying themselves. Okay, Chinese food. This has been widely discussed. Okay, Chinese is really Chinese culture is famous for its food. Food is everything. Food is very important for Chinese. And there are a variety of Chinese food in China. We usually characterize them into 8 schools of Chinese food. And each of them actually represent a particular area. For example, this is Shandong food. Shandong people, their character are straightforward. So Shandong food is usually have very strong flavor and in big quantity. And Hangzhou food, similar to Suzhou food and Shanghai food, because people in that area are more delicate, more sophisticated, and their dish usually are presented in a more sophisticated way, not in a big plate, small but very delicate, very sophisticated, look very nice. And Cantonese food is also famous because Cantonese love food and they can spend many hours just to get one dish cooked. And they're famous for their seafood because, Guangdong province is very close to Hong Kong, and Cantonese food is very similar to Hong Kong food. A lot of seafood, and also they love soups, all kinds of soups. And Sichuan food, of course, is famous for being spicy. That is also has geological reasons in it, because in Sichuan province, particularly in Chengdu, when Chengdu lies in the basin, surrounded by mountains, and there are a lot of wetness in that area. That particularly in winter, you feel cold and then you feel wet inside. So having a pepper, having food, spicy food, can spice up the kind of inner heat in your body and make you feel warm. So geography also plays a role in Chinese food. Of course, now there are a variety of food in China, but in northern China, we are more famous for this main course, whereas in southern China, seafood and fish are more popular in the southern part of China. But as I said before, the hot pot has also become very popular in China, because in China now, eating, as I said, is no longer a way to feed yourself, but rather to share something, whether you share your emotions, whether you share your love or share information, share discussion. So it's more about get together than eating the food itself. So a lot of people will say, it doesn't matter where I go. I just want to be with you and let's have something to eat. So it's about being socializing that is important than the food itself. But of course, rather than me talking about food, I will show you a short clip of videos, and you will see how a foreigner that has lived in China describes Chinese food.
Oh, I love the options. So I feel like there's a huge misconception around Chinese food out there. People that think that Chinese food is the kind of food that you find at the local Chinese takeout, the Mongolian lamb, the lemon chicken, you know the drill. In my experience of being in China and being completely obsessed with Chinese food, I can tell you that that is not the kind of food you find in China. Chinese food is so varied, you can't put one label on it. Every province, every city, every town even, will have its own local food specialties. And that's what I find so exciting about traveling in China, because every new place that I go to is going to have a must-try dish that you can try and love and learn more about the local culture. So that's what I'm really, really missing. I could talk for a really long time about the topic of food and how much I'm missing it. So I'm going to keep it short and just say that I'm missing it, and just say that I'm very grateful and thankful that here in Sydney we have so many options when it comes to good Chinese food. So yeah, I'm saved. I've been dreaming of this moment for the last 3 days. Look, let me tell you, I've had a few Lanzhou Lamyan in my time. I spent quite a bit of time in Gansu province where the dish originates. This is a really good Lanzhou Lamyan. But it's not just the food that I miss in China, it's also the culture that surrounds food and how food is such an integral part of Chinese culture and day-to-day social interaction as well as conversation. I would say a good 50% of the conversations I have with my good friends in China are about food, about what we want to eat, what we ate yesterday, what we want to eat next week, what we're planning on eating for our birthdays. Food is always the top of the list of good conversation topics. I just love how in China food really brings people together. There's no doubt about it. Even the way that Chinese eat, the eating custom, which is to share everything, put everything in the middle of the table, everyone's helping themselves. It's a shared thing that you do with friends, that you do with family. You don't have your own portion that you eat by yourself. It's a shared experience. If you've ever been in China, you've probably gone to a hot pot restaurant and enjoyed sitting around a table, having the best time, eating your guts out with friends. It's such a social activity. Or meeting up with a group of friends after a big night of partying at 3 a.m. for some lu chua or shaokao, which is basically barbecued meat that you eat on the street, that you have these little plastic chairs that you sit on and you sit around with a big group of friends, you eat, you drink, you laugh, you be merry. It's just so much fun. I really miss this element of being in China.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about Chinese holidays, Chinese festivals. I'll start with the Spring Festival. The Spring Festival is the China's Lunar New Year. It usually falls in January or February. It is always the first day of the first month according to the Lunar New Year. It is the most important Chinese festival because this one is really about family reunion. It doesn't matter where you go, where you work. Every year when the Spring Festival comes, you have to come back home to be with your parents, with your brother and sisters, and with all the other relatives. So this is the biggest festival in China. What we do is, as I said, everyone will be coming home. And the typical food we eat in northern part of China is jiaozi. As I mentioned, it has a feeling inside, and everyone can do this together. So that instead of just mom doing all the cooking, everyone shares by making dumplings together. And also in southern part of China, of course, during the Spring Festival, there has to be fish, because fish in Chinese is pronounced yu. Yu also has a meaning of being surplus or abundant, which brings good luck for the coming year. So everything, especially during the Spring Festival, everything is symbolic. And people will be putting up this paper card on the window, make it light up the house, and go shopping before the Spring Festival comes. Buying things that are particular used in the Spring Festival, and also putting up the couplets in front of the door to bring in good luck and drive off all the evil spirit. Hongbao, this red envelope, is popular also during the Spring Festival. Usually hongbao are given by the senior citizens or the grandparents to the grandchildren to wish them good luck in the coming new year. And of course, the family dinner is the most important thing during the Spring Festival. And also we'll be watching the Spring Festival Gala, which usually lasts 4 hours, the longest TV show in the world, I guess. Everyone will be, after the dinner, everyone will be watching the TV show and chat. That's the best time that we could have. This is the second festival. It's called Lantern Festival. Because the Spring Festival usually lasts half a month, 50 days, from the first day of the Lunar New Year to the 14th day. And then on the 15th day of the Lunar New Month, we'll have the Lantern Festival. That's where people started to make lanterns and appreciate or to watch all different kinds of lanterns on the streets. And the typical food during the Lantern festival is the sticky rice. Because it's all in round shape, it also means family reunion. So it just very symbolic of reunion. And of course, in a lot of part of China, the whole city line will be light up by lanterns. So Lantern Festival symbolizes the end of the Lunar New Year celebration. And after the Lantern Festival comes Qingming Festival. Qingming means bright. This actually is the beginning of spring. That we don't call it we don't call it like a festival, because this is usually the time to remember those we have lost during the past year, and also to pay respect to our ancestors. People would usually go to nowadays people will go to a cemetery to pay respect to our ancestors, and also to visit our lost ones. For example, mom, every year I'll be visiting my mom in those together with my father and also my brother and sisters. So it is a must to be reunited with our loved ones who have passed away. And also because this is the beginning of the springtime, and children would go, another tradition is to fly cats during this time. And the next one is the Dragon Boat Festival. The Dragon Boat Festival is really to remember an ancient poet who committed suicide in the river after failing to fight against the corrupt government. So his name is Chu, and during the spring and autumn period, after he committed suicide, the story goes that people would, after they have heard the news, they started to run to the river to save his body, and also to feed rice in order to keep the fish from eating his corpse. So during the Dragon Boat Festival, we always have this sticky rice as a traditional food, and also have this dragon boat competition, especially in the southern part of China where there are abundant rivers for them to have this kind of activity. And this also different style of this called 粽子, typical food for the Dragon Boat Festival. For example, in southern part of China, they will have meat in it, but usually in northern part of China, we only have dates in it. Mid-Autumn Festival. It is also a very important festival in China. This usually falls on the 15th day of autumn. 15th day usually we call 8月15 in August. But according to Lunar New Year, 8月usually falls on September. So sometime between September and October. The Mid-Autumn Festival is usually the day when the moon is at its fullest. That's why we are borrowing the meaning of the full moon to mean family reunion. So this is the second biggest occasion for family reunion. The tradition is to get together, have a family dinner, and appreciate the moon together. Okay, and the typical food to be eaten during the Mid-Autumn Festival is the mooncake. We call it the mooncake. Usually it's a very, very sweet mooncake. And of course, the National Day usually lasts 7 days. In China, we only have 2 long holidays. One is the Spring Festival, which lasts 7 days, officially 7 days off. And the second one will be the National Day, also 7 days off. After the National Day, official festivals are over. But in China, we still have a lot of other holidays and festivals, particularly for those ethnic minority people. For example, this is the ethnic Dai people. They have the water splashing festival. I don't know whether anyone of you have been to India or come from India or Nepal. This is more like the Holi festival in India and Nepal. But by splashing water unto others. This is to give them good wishes or good luck for others. So this is a way to express best wishes. And this is for the ethnic Mongolians. This is called Nadam Fair, because Mongolians are very good at sports and very good at horse riding, and also doing all those kind of sports. So it's very typical Mongolian festival. And Tibetans have their own festival, many of their own festivals. This is celebration of the New Year for Tibetans. Tibetan culture are very unique in China. A lot of even Han people are very interested to learn about Tibetan culture. I have been very fortunate that I have visited Tibet for 7 times, and every time I am amazed at how diverse their culture is, and how nice the people are. Okay, so lastly, I want to talk about Chinese education. How important is it for Chinese? As I mentioned when I was talking about Chinese culture, Chinese pay a lot of attention to education. Let's first look at the Chinese school system. Chinese start kindergarten from 3 years old. So usually kids under 3 years old will be looked after at home rather than sending it to a kindergarten. And starting from 6 years old, we started grade 1 primary school until at 12 years old, we started junior high school, followed by senior high school. And at this level, we started to have vocational training. And then after high school, the university, college, and then master degree, doctor degree. So quite similar to, I would presume it's quite similar to other countries, this system. And this is the percentage of kids going to different level of education. As you can see, this is compulsory education period. Almost 100% Chinese kids will be would have the right to enjoy compulsory education. Then this college, only 50%, 50%, because the rest of for those students who cannot or enter in the university, they can choose vocational training or by further vocational training is the best choice for them. Otherwise, they can start working and then go back to work after a few years of work experience. About private schools, a lot of people think that because China is a socialist country, maybe we don't have private schools. We do. Actually, Beijing International Chinese College is a private school, or we call it independent school. In China, this chart is about Beijing, the private schools in Beijing. As we can see, the total number of private or independent schools is this one. Compared to the total number of schools in Beijing, private or independent schools occupies 36%. That's quite a large number at least for Chinese. As we can see, vocational private schools. There were more private schools for preschools and vocational high schools and college and universities. The reason that we don't have a lot of private schools, as you can see, the lowest percentage is in primary school and junior high school, is because we have a big entrance examination for universities. If you are in private or independent school, because the government will not be supervising very strictly on private and independent schools, that these schools do not have to follow the specific curriculum that are taught in public private schools and junior high schools. That would make them difficult to go through the big entrance examination because there are specific targets specific measures to make sure that you can go to the entrance examination. Most of the private schools, I have to say, are for those who choose not to go through the big entrance examination because it's so hard to go through those big entrance examinations. So, and also some of the parents, because they have the financial ability to support the children to be educated overseas. So they would send their kids to private kindergartens, to private primary schools, and then during the senior school years, they will be sent to study overseas. So it's actually two different kind of way of education. A lot of parents choose the public schools because they want their kids to choose. They would prefer the Chinese way of education, and for a lot of parents, they want their children to be educated in Western countries. So they put them into private schools, which emphasize more about individualism, about and also catering to some of the exams in foreign countries. For example, in Beijing we have a lot of British schools or American schools. Kids can go to those schools, but those private schools are usually very expensive in China. I want to explain a little bit about why education is so important in China. As you can see in many other countries, Chinese students are usually the top students in terms of academic achievements. And that is because education has been emphasized by traditional Chinese culture. When I was introducing Chinese traditional culture, remember I mentioned about the Confucianism, because one of the important philosophy that the Confucianism and traditional Chinese philosophy is to emphasize education, and there's a reason in it. As explained in this poem, is because everything else is useless. Only education is important. Because in ancient China, the only way that you can have a future or to be able to make a contribution to the society is by being an official. And how can you become an official? You have to be able to have knowledge. You have to be selected by the government to work for the government. So in ancient times, there were basically in the Chinese society, there were four classes. The first one is scholars, or we call officials. Scholars and officials is one and the same, because only when you have education, that you're educated, you are qualified to become an official. And then followed by farmers, because traditionally China was a farming country, based on agriculture. So farmers will also enjoy relatively higher social status, and skilled workers. The last one will be business. So in ancient Chinese society, being a businessman do not enjoy high social status. Only those educated. And in order to become an official, all kinds of exams were taking place, and from different levels, from the county level, from the provincial level, all the way to the central level, and to be examined by the emperor himself. This shows how you enter through the exams. So everyone has to learn. You have to be educated, and in today's China, education is also one of the most important way to change your life. If you were born in for example, a remote area or in a poverty-stricken area, because only through education, by going to universities in big cities, that can change your life. Otherwise, you might have to stay in a small village in a mountain area for the rest of your life. And this is the big national entrance exam for universities, which is called Gaokao. This is the typical thing. Because we have such a huge population, it is very hard for talents to show themselves. In order to select talents from this large population base, certain exams has to be in place. So China has this big Gaokao, which is held only once a year, and at the same time, all over China at the same time, same paper, same exam, same time for everyone. So you can see the competition. You can see the competition. These are typical things for the students preparing for the Gaokao. I think the meaning of Gaokao is very obvious because, as I said, Gaokao or this big national entrance exam for universities is a way to help young people to go into university to have further education. And only through education can you make your future. Okay, I wanted to show you the last video clip I'm going to show you is about Gaokao. And through this clip, you will be able to see why education is important for Chinese and how this is shaping the futures of young people.